here at the Hustle Casino in LA for the first time since July 2021, and I get things started in this 2-3 no limit meetup game in for 500, and in the first notable hand, I pick up pocket queens from the hijack and raise to 12. Small blind calls, and big blind re-raises to 55. Feels like a fairly polarized situation, and I have to proceed cautiously and just flat. The small blind folds, and we go heads up to Jack-Jack for a rainbow. Big blind continues with a down c-bet of 40, and while there's merit to raising to deny against ace-king and perhaps suited ace-x hands, I don't see a lot of inferior hands to queens that would call a raise, so I just call. Feeling like I may be in a cooler spot against aces or kings, I hit a gin card on the turn in the form of a queen of diamonds giving me the nut house and putting up a diamond draw. Big blind sticks with the aggression and bets 80 with 170 back. My initial thought is to flat, but I do consider a raise given the presence of diamonds, making it possible for either of us to just get it in here with the draw. I go with the former though, and put in the 80. River rolls off a blank 6 of clubs, and after a quick bit of deliberation, big blind rips for 170 effective. I make the quick call and get confirmation that I was very lucky on the turn, as my opponent flips over, pocket aces. I start this session off with some run good, and I look to carry that forward in this next one when I pick up ace-10 offsuit in the cutoff. Hijack opens the action for a raise to 16, and in these later position spots, ace-10 is a semi-premium, so I 3-bets a 40, and it falls back to the hijack, and he doesn't think 40 is premium enough, so he repops to 115 with 150 back. Not the best spot to go with my hand, so I pitch it thinking that my opponent has kings, and he was nice enough to show pocket aces. So fortunate to net a positive result in these first two hands against the best starting hand in No Limit Hold'em, I then transition to playing small cards holding 5-6 in the big blind. There's a middle position raised to 15, and the small blind calls. 5-6 suited is my favorite hand, and while this one is offsuit, it still looks good enough to continue, particularly since I'm closing the action. We take a flop 3 ways, which comes ace-4-3 with 2 hearts and a spade, and giving me an open-ended straight draw. Checks the initial raise in the middle position, and he fires 20. Small blind calls, and I put in the 20 as well, just trying to get there. 4-3 comes to 5 of diamonds, giving me second pair, and putting up a one-liner. After small blind checks, I consider leading to rep a deuce, but I shy away, and middle position checks back. River comes a board pairing 4, and small blind leads for 40. Feels like a blocker bet, but given the meetup game dynamics and having middle position left to act, I assume one of them should have an ace and probably won't fold, so I just let this one go. And after some time in the tank, middle position puts in the call. Small blind announces good call as he tables red 8s, and middle position has him pipped, turning over red 9s. My read was certainly off in this one, as some aggression would have likely got it through, but I take that mindset into this next one when I make a light open to 12 from under the gun with 9-10 offsuit. Low jack, button, and big blind call, and we go multi-way to a similar flop as the last hand as it comes ace-6-4 with 2 hearts and a spade. The difference is that I've got the aggressive action in this one, and while I've mostly got nothing on this board, I stick with the aggression through a c-bet of 25 after it checks to me. I shed one believer, but button and big blind need more convincing as they both call, and the turn comes a 10 of spades giving me second pair and putting up another flush draw. Pretty interesting card, and after small blind checks, I still lean towards a bet for a couple of reasons, even though I've picked up some showdown value. 1, I would likely keep betting if I had an ace, and 2, a bet would essentially be a merge, as I can potentially get the opponents to fold an ace, and I can actually get value against a variety of draws on this board. That in mind, I sloppily put out a bet of 90, and get it through as both opponents fold. Not too long after, I play one more significant hand at this first table, when I raise to 15 from under the gun, with ace-king offsuit. Middle position and low jack call, and we go 3 ways to 9-8-7 with a hard draw. Not a good flop, but after I check, middle position and low jack check as well, and 4-3 comes the ace of spades. I bet 30 this time, and getting raised would kind of suck, but that doesn't happen as middle position calls, and low jack folds. We go heads up to a board pairing 8 on the river, which also brings in a third heart, although I'm not overly concerned with a flush getting there, given both the action in this hand, and holding the ace of hearts. I continue to go for value, this time for a bet of 75. I may value own myself against the occasional 8, but just hoping to garner a call from primarily a weaker ace, and perhaps some non-believing middling pairs. My opponent tanks for quite a bit, and ultimately, puts in the call. I table the winning hand against pocket 6s that was looking to bluff catch, which I can't fault him as I can get splashy at times, but shout out to Vince in this one, just a super cool guy, and he even brought me a quality bottle of tequila as a gift, so just super grateful for that gesture, and everyone that comes to these meetup games, tunes into the videos, and just the overall support. I definitely don't take this kind of stuff for granted, And I know that I'm lucky, especially when I pick up pocket 8s in the first notable hand at the second table. Under the gun raises to 15, and since the number 8 translates to good luck in Chinese, I can't picture losing this hand, so I re-raise to 40. An opponent in the hijack then jams for 42, and under the gun re-jams for 105. These aren't regs, so I ain't folding, and let's take a run out.
Oh, that's me.
Asian hand is done. No more done, no more done. I got it.
Nice.
I end up flopping top set, which looks really good until the jack off and under the gun. I mean, the jack comes off on the turn to give under the gun the best hand, and it looks like 8s aren't so lucky after all. But shortly after, I pick up another good looking hand in the form of ace jack of spades from under the gun. The straddle is on, I raise to 20 and pick up 2 callers from the small blind and straddler. We take a flop 3 ways, which comes queen 9-5 rainbow. I choose not to c-bet this one as action checks through, and the turn comes a queen of spades pairing the board and giving me the nut flush draw. After both players check, I put out a semi-bluff bet of 20. Small blind calls, straddler folds, and we go heads up to the ace of diamonds on the river, improving my hand to solid value. Small blind decides to lead this time for a bet of 50. Given the passive action on earlier streets, I don't put my opponent on a queen, so I do think I have the best hand in this spot a vast majority of the time. The question is if I can extract value from a weaker hand such as a 9, a medium pocket pair, and some weaker ace-x hands that got sticky. In the moment I feel like I can, and I make a small raise of 75 more to 125. Small blind thinks I just called, and turns his hand over, which ends up being pocket 9s for a full house. He of course isn't folding that hand, so after the dealer informs him of the raise, he acknowledges the situation via a call. And yeah, my read was way off on this one, but I'd like to shake this one off as I pick up another suited ace, this time with ace 8 of clubs in the hijack. I raise to 12, the same opponent from the previous hand defends from the big blind, and we go heads up to jack 10-8 with 2 clubs and a heart, so I flop fairly hard with bottom pair and the nut flush draw. Big blind checks, and while I can definitely get behind a bet and staying balanced isn't necessary in meetup games, I decided to check this one back for 2 main reasons. 1, the board doesn't necessarily favor me, and 2, checking allows for some deception and staying protected on future runouts. For example, a lot of club draws would naturally bet, so by checking, it may look like I never have clubs, should the flush complete. Anyhow, the turn comes a 6 of spades, and after big blind checks, I look to juice the pot up via a bet of 15. Big blind calls, and the river is the 7 of spades, completing both a one-liner and backdoor spades. Big blind opts lead for 35, and I don't think I can do much here, so I just fold. Big blind was kind enough to show jack 9 offsuit. Inspired by my opponent winning the last 2 hands with jack 9 and pocket 9s, I look to replicate that success when I find 9s in the small blind. We were playing short-handed, and a friendly opponent wearing a Commerce hoodie raises to 20 from under the gun. Given the fairly large raise size for this game, I opt to just flat instead of re-raise. Looking to drill a 9, the flop comes 5-4 deuce rainbow, so technically not the worst board for 9s, but after I check, undergun fires a pot size c-bet of 40. While it's a bit soft to not continue for another street, it feels like an uphill battle against a better pair, so I just let it go.
Maybe you got kings over there.
Alright, moving over to the third table, I raise to 15 from under the gun with queen jack of hearts. The blinds call, and we go 3 ways to 7-5-4 rainbow, giving me a whole lot of nothing. After the blinds check, I do the same and get a nice turn with the jack of diamonds giving me top pair. Small blind checks and big blind bets 30. Conventional thought is to just flat and evaluate rivers, but given the presence of various draws, I think I can go for some thin value here, so I raise to 90. Small blind gets out of the way, and after some deliberation, big blind repops to 290. I quickly fold as based on the feeling at the table and observing my opponent's mannerisms, it didn't feel like I was getting raised by a combo draw. But with queen jack suited not working out, I'm not ready to give up on hearts as I get dealt king 9 on the button. After low jack raises to 15 and cutoff calls, I just flat and find top pair a 9-4 deuce rainbow. Checks to me, and with a vulnerable top pair, I bet 25 for protection and value. The initial raise on the low jack tank calls, and the cutoff folds. Fortunately comes a jack of clubs, and low jack checks. While my opponent could have connected with this card, I stick with the same thought process as the flop, and look to deny against unpaired Broadway holdings through a bet of 60. This time the low jack folds, and I carry forward a bit of positive momentum into the fourth table when I get dealt pocket aces in the hijack. Middle position limps, and I raise to 20. Big blind and middle position call, and we go 3 ways to jack 6 deuce with a spade draw. Pretty safe flop for the aces, and nice to have some spade coverage as well. Checks to me, and on this board texture, I think I can go larger since hands that will continue, for example a jack, flush draws, and some pocket pairs, they'll be insensitive to sizing, so I may as well try to get a few more bucks of value, and I c-bet 40, and shed away the big blind, as only middle position calls. Fortunately comes a 7 of spades completing the front door flush, and after middle position checks, I definitely want to keep betting. The plan was to go larger on blank turns, but given this card, my opponent is likely drawing very thin, unless of course he has me crushed with a set, 2 pair, or spades. That said, in an effort to get value from hands like a jack and pocket pairs with a spade, I go for a bet of 80. Middle position calls again, and the river comes a queen of diamonds. This time my opponent leads for a bet of 200. Interesting play by my opponent because it's sort of a blocker bet, but it's on the larger side, which isn't typical of block bets. It seems reasonable that my opponent can have queen jack, but given the stack sizes, turning aces into a bluff doesn't seem all that attractive. Raising to get called by worse seems unlikely as well, so I just put in the 200. And after I do so, he's reluctant to show, so I just turn over the aces, and they're good. Pretty steady session thus far, being up a tad over 300, as I decide to play the opposite of a premium, holding 4-5 offsuit on the button. Low jack raises to 10, and we all can play a hand, so I call, and that brings in the big blind as well. We go 3 ways to ace deuce, all black giving me a gut shot, and wish I could occasionally be drawing dead. Action checks through though, and the turn comes a 5 of spades giving me second pair to go with the gutter. Big blind checks, and the initial raise in the low jack puts out a delayed c-bet of 15. I call, and big blind folds. Fifth street rolls off the 9 of diamonds, and low jack continues for a bet of 25. I do think it threw for a bit considering a hero call, but ultimately give my opponent credit for having a better hand, and I fold. Shout out to GPN for taking this one down, but with the 4-5 mini adventure not working out, I revert back to what has been working, as aces show up again. I got lucky to crack them in the first hand, and they've been holding up when I've had them. There's a low jack raise to 17, and I re-raise to 45 from the big blind. Low jack calls, and we go heads up to 6-4 deuce with 2 diamonds and a spade. With my opponent having 170 back, I like to get the money in on either the flop or turn, and put out a $45 continuation bet. My opponent in the LJ must be a fan of LJ and the Lakers this season, as he does his best impersonation, and loses this one. Shout out to my opponent John though in this one, who's a great sport and came out to enjoy the meetup game festivities, and as the session winds down, I pick up another good looking hand with ace deuce of spades in the small blind. Cutoff opens for a large amount to 25, and while I entertain a light 3-bet with a good candidate, I play it safe via a flat, and that brings in the big blind as well. We take a flop 3 ways, which comes king 4 deuce with 2 clubs and a spade, giving me bottom pair and the running nut draw. Checks to the cutoff, and he fires a relatively large continuation bet of 60. I call, and big blind calls as well. The turn comes another king, so a pretty interesting card as it should slow the cutoff down a bit, unless of course he has it. It checks to him, and he does check it back. The river comes to 7 of diamonds, and it checks to the cutoff once again. This time he does a stop and go and bets 100. Part of me wants the hero call since clubs bricked out, but given that the big blind is still left to act, I think I have to give at least one of the opponents credit for a value hand. I reluctantly fold, but big blind calls. Cutoff doesn't want to show, so big blind turns over the winning hand with king 9 of diamonds. And that brings the session to the last notable hand that I was able to capture, and it's a premium with pocket queens in the low jack. The straddle is on, under the gun raises to 20, and I further increased the price of admission to 60. Looks like everyone came out to lock up some dough, as the big blind, straddler, and under the gun call. We go 4 ways to ace 8-3 with 2 clubs and a heart. Checks to me in position, and while my exact hand wants to check, I'm definitely incentivized to c-bet, as it just looks weak if I check back an ace high flop in this spot. I put out 80 and shed 2 of the 3 players as only the big blind calls. Force comes a 10 of hearts, putting up another flush draw, and big blind checks again. Unless my opponent has 2 pair or a set, I think it'll be tough for him to continue on this board. So in an effort to get him off a hand no stronger than ace jack, I turn my queens into a bluff and bet 200 with a bid over 300 back. After weighing his options, the big blind ultimately rips from my 530 effective. Looks like I picked a bad time to make a play, and unfortunately have to let this one go. Shout out to my opponent who takes this one down with ace 10 offsuit, and it was definitely his day, as he also hit a 5-team parlay with St. Peter's money line as the final leg to get the job done. Following this hand, I did play a bit more, and I mixed it up with Alex from Wolfgang Poker as he decided to stop by. But aside from a few small pots that didn't go my way, that's gonna wrap it up for a very enjoyable session of poker at Hustler Casino.
Ace King?
Alright, back home here in San Francisco, and before I jump into the poker results, just want to touch on a few things. First off, a big thanks to everyone that came out to the meetup game. Just had a really great time meeting everyone, playing with you all, and we had a good 6 to 8 tables running strong, and people came from near and far to attend, places like Utah, Santa Barbara, and other locations. So really grateful for that turnout. Also shout out to Branson and Wolfgang for attending and joining the meetup game festivities. And last but not least, big thanks to the following list of people that made the trip really special for Cindy and me. First off, Jenny for taking us around West Covina and Hermosa Beach. And then Kieran from Close to Broke ate at one of his restaurants in South Pasadena, which you saw at the beginning of the video, and just super generous with just some amazing food. Big thanks to Fish Poker and his wife Jenny for taking us around town as well. And last but not least, big shout out to Richard. He went above and beyond to really just make it very easy for Cindy and me to have a trip out there. Took us around to different places, so that kind of stuff doesn't get lost when you know, Cindy and I travel to these types of things. So big thanks to everyone for that. As for the poker results, got off to a good start and was up 300 to 400 at the peak, and then tried to get a little fancy with pocket queens at the end of the session. That ultimately derailed things a bit, and was ultimately in the game for $1,000 and out for $570. So book a loss of $430, and I keep this weird, unfortunate streak going of losing when I hit the record button, but I will book a win on the vlog again some point. Don't know when, but we'll just have to stay tuned to see when that happens. And to close out this video, just want to mention that I'll be doing a meetup game at ACES and Vine in Napa, California on Thursday, April 28th. We'll be playing 2-3 no limit, 3 p.m. to 9 p.m. and the sign-up sheet is going to go live on Poker Atlas later this week. So be on the lookout for that. I'll put a link in the description box below, and really hope to meet some more of you out there. It was a really great time last time. And the only other thing I wanted to mention is that the next video, I just got one more video in the queue. It's going to be a pretty fun one, I think. I play some of the biggest pots I think I've ever captured for the vlog. So if you could do me a favor, please hit that sub button. I don't want to get stuck on 14K subs just because I don't like the number 4. Anything after that, you know, if I can get to 15,000 and above, that's just gravy. But do me a favor, help me not get stuck at 14. The number 4 is bad luck in Chinese, and I'm pretty superstitious. So with that, that's gonna wrap it up for this one. See you in the next video.